Why, hello there. Welcome to Smart Aspirations with Justin Huff. Sit back, chill out, and go on a journey around the world. Justin will discuss tales of hope, discovery, and general irreverence with some of the most dynamic personalities in the travel business. Remember, we do cool shit, and so can you.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of Smart Aspirations with Justin Huff. I'm both honored and excited to have the renowned safari guide Alex Walker with us this week to talk about safaris in East Africa, specifically in Tanzania's renowned Serengeti National Park and Kenya's iconic Masai Mara, arguably the birthplace of the luxury safari. Alex is the owner and operator of the Sarian portfolio of camps in both Kenya and Tanzania. These are a brilliant little collection of both permanent and mobile tented camps that followed the great migration of wildebeest and zebra around throughout the year. I love chatting with Alex about safaris because I feel that he's so purely authentic with how he approaches the whole client safari experience. It's the easiest way to say is it's old school. It's real. The camps themselves, they're simple yet elegant. And there's a huge focus on the quality of guiding and one of the highest levels of service in the entire business in terms of staff to guest ratio. Whether you're on safari here, when you're on safari here, it's all about slowing down and taking the moment in and really being a part of nature and letting everything happen around you. In today's day and age, particularly in the US, we don't have a lot of vacation time. And that's so unfortunate with a long-haul destination like Africa, because you want to cover as much ground as possible. And in a country as huge as Tanzania, and Tanzania is enormous. If you take the furthest southern border of Tanzania, and you put it towards the bottom of Florida, like Key West, for example, the furthest northern bit would be up in Kentucky, just to give you an example. And to set that into perspective, just traveling around there with the flights and the drives takes a long time to get around. And so it's not uncommon to spend 3 to 4 days in transit if you're combining 3 to 4 different areas within Tanzania. I mean, forget combining the north and the south. We're just talking about the north in this particular series. In the ideal stay for most Americans is like an 11, 12-night safari. So that's a lot of time spent in transit. To some people, that's ideal, that want to cover as much ground, but to others, it can seem more like a marathon and less than an actual vacation. I've been on safari with Alex, and I can personally attest to how nice it is just to take a moment and to stay longer, take it easy, chill out, and you have these full comprehensive days on safari, and you really become immersed in your surroundings, in the environment. On top of that, each booking is guaranteed a private guide and tracker that get to know your interests, personalities, tastes, whether or not you want to stay busy throughout the day or you want to take it easy. Do you want to sleep in one morning? Do you want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning if you're a keen photographer and want to get that early morning sunlight? And it takes a few days for personalities to gel. And when you're spending more time on safari in one particular location, like the Serengeti National Park, for example, the northern Serengeti, just for the sake of argument, there's so much going on. It's so prolific. It's so diverse. And if you're just there to see the Great Migration, you can see that. But you can also see so many other incredible things going around. Elephant, big cats. It's like a moving buffet line for predators. It's incredible. And on top of all of that, it's gorgeous. I love slowing down in these parts of Africa, and clients that do that come back, they're like, we're really glad we listened to you. Speaking from experience, there's nothing more uncomfortable than to be on a rushed safari, what we call in the business Ferrari safari, where you're just sucking dust during the dry season, which is peak season, and you're chasing around at breakneck speed, trying to catch as much as you can in basically like a 2 to 3 night stay. And so you have one full day to be immersed in the area, and then you're gone. It's exhausting, and you spend more time bouncing around a vehicle than really taking in the moment and just being not at the risk of sounding like a hippie, not think there's anything wrong with that. I kind of am one, with Mother Nature and wildlife, which is the whole point to most people going on safari. Just a quick heads up on this episode. This is a 2-part series. Alex ran into some internet connection from his home in Nairobi. The first time we shot this towards the end of the video, it does kind of end abruptly, unfortunately. But we asked Alex to come back on for another chat. So that'll be part 2 next week, which is also an awesome discussion. So we're really excited about that too. If you enjoyed the video, as always, please give us a subscription, click the subscribe button. If you're interested in planning a safari with us to East Africa, I've left the contact link there below. We'd love to hear from you. It's in the description right there. So just click that. We can set up a time to chat. And without further ado, here's my friend, Alex Walker. Take care. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Smart Aspirations with Justin Huff. As always, I'm your host, Justin Huff, and with me today is a wonderful, incredible human being. I've had the pleasure of knowing Alex Walker for the better part of 12 years now. And it's been, I was fortunate enough to be on safari with Alex about 3-4 years ago in his camps in the northern Serengeti, and the experience just blew me away. Alex told me more about his life, about his ethos when it comes to safari and sustainability, and we share a lot of synchronicities. And I think that I'm so thrilled that Alex wanted to be a part of this program. Alex, welcome to Smart Aspirations. We're thrilled to have you. How's everything going in Nairobi?
Hey, sorry, I get a bit disturbed. I've got my little fellow, this poor little bronzy sunbird who's just rushing around. He came in early and he hasn't left. Anyway, he'll be here to join us.
I think that's a positive omen.
He's right there and watching. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for having me. That's to start with.
Awesome. Well, you told me a story when we were in the Serengeti together, and your early life in East Africa is completely fascinating. I vividly recall you telling me about your father just kind of releasing you into the wilds of southern Sudan. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, so well, I was very fortunate. I was born in southern Tanzania in Mufindi, which is not far from Ruaha National Park, one of those beautiful parks in Africa. And then, from there, we moved up to Kenya, and from Kenya up to southern Sudan. So at the age of sort of like 9-10 years old, there you are, you're thrown out into this. I mean, it's still this massive wilderness. We were probably a day's drive, nearly 2 days drive from the nearest sort of town or city. And literally, your playground's 1 million acres of degazetted forest. This beautiful, beautiful environment. It's what to say. I mean, it's a real privilege to have been sort of able to enjoy that space.
So did you have, like, when you were kind of out on your own, did you have like friends with you? Did you have family with you, or was it just go have fun, survive? Here's some supplies.
Well, I guess, we were miles from anywhere. So, I mean, my sisters used to stay in Nairobi. They had their horses here, so they enjoyed that sort of life. And I used to go with my dad. And it's you could have turned the clock back 1,000 years and not seen any difference. I mean, it really is a real wilderness. The little winding tracks, the grass growing right over the top of the car. You sort of go down this sort of funnel, and then up these windy roads into the forest and up onto the top. And we sat in the Imatong Mountains. They sit overlooking northern Uganda and Kidepo National Park, in fact.
Right. Kidepo.
So you got to drive literally a day's drive, but probably about 500 miles before you start to see any sort of modern influence of any sort. It was really that the villages and everything that were in that local area were purely traditional. Guys were living a very simple subsistence lifestyle. But, it definitely opened your eyes, or gives you a deep background and appreciation for real wilderness and everything that it brings.
And I'm assuming that, well, firstly, that makes my South Florida upbringing look completely tame. But that experience, was there a moment where that you recall being that age and being like, okay, I am going to dedicate my life to an outdoors lifestyle or a lifestyle in the wilderness?
I think, way earlier, when the sort of life that we're brought up on and these sort of ranches and farms and bush lifestyle, right from the age of like 4 or 5 years old, for earliest memories, you just want to be outdoors. You're sitting in the classroom, you're sitting in the window looking outdoors, you want to be outdoors.
Right.
And you got your mates around the back and off you go, and you just traipse around, you look for some honey, you're trying to find some food, always some food,
Yeah.
Whatever you can eat, whatever fruit is ripe, go and climb the tree and get it down. Go and scoot around if you're a honey guide there and go off and chase after it and try and find. Then you rush back and find your dad or one of your mates' dads and come along and light a fire and smoke it out and wait for them to get there. You weren't brave enough to get in there amongst the honey at that stage, but you definitely wanted to eat it.
That's awesome.
It's yeah.
Well, when you were having these experiences and dedicating your life to this outdoor lifestyle, what got you into the safari aspect of things? And could you kind of take us through like a little journey from then, like kind of late school until how you started Sarian?
Yeah, I guess, my family's always been on safari and in safari. And so it's just a natural progression, to want to be out there in the bush. And like everybody pushes you to sort of go and get an education, go to university, go and get a bit of paper, get into the system. And it's like, no, you want to be in the bush, you want to be outdoors. So every decision that you've ever made is focused on what takes you and keeps you in that sort of environment. And I was very lucky, so I apprenticed with a friend of my dad's, straight out of school, so age 17. And I worked and apprenticed with several well-known guides at the time. And then a couple of years later, I got my own sort of license and permit. And then very soon after, about the age of 21, I started my own business and doing mobile safaris. And in those days, we'd pick people up at the airport and we'd drive off for 30 days, 45 days, and just have the tents and the camp, and it would just keep moving. And if you like this place, that's cool. If you didn't like it, let's keep moving on.
Right.
Was there lots of animals there? Was there not? And you just shifted around, and eventually you got back to town a day or two before your guests were flying out, and you had a big old party and said goodbye and lots of tears. And then the next morning you rolled up to the airport again, sort of with a stinking hangover and met the next group. So, yeah, that's what took you. I mean, and then it was the case, I guess what led us to forming more permanent camps we went from sort of seasonal into the permanent type environment, was seeing more and more people coming into the business, and then the likelihood or the chance of losing out on some of those really cool campsites, the places that you really enjoyed most of all. And as a result, we ended up sort of settling down and putting our feet down in the Mara North Conservancy,
right?
In what was then known as Koyaki. And so that's we sort of started with a whole lot of old equipment and sort of 10 grand in the bank to build some decks and put a little mess up, and it was a very simple affair to start with, that's for sure. Not that it's grown that much.
And we'll put a map on there for the viewers for the YouTube video, and so they see exactly where you're talking about in Kenya. So in you've got operations in Kenya and Tanzania, and in the Kenya operation where you were talking about just now, you've got Sarian the original, right? And then you've got Ngare Sarian, which is literally right across the Mara River, and that's in that Mara North Conservancy. And you've also got camps inside the National Reserve or the Game Reserve. What's the official title?
That's in Korombo. Is our little. It's a tiny little camp. It's a SOP to our origin. It's our little mobile unit. It's a very traditional sort of mobile style of camp.
Right.
When we say mobile, it's not little putt tents. These are, you know,
Sure.
big frame tents you can walk in and out. But
Yeah.
you know, there's still got a bathroom inside and a bucket shower in the back and everything. But it's the type of thing that we used to take down and put up every 3 or 4 days, and we'd shift around the countryside.
Sure.
So yeah, I guess what took me there from, of course, I was in Tanzania, doing mobiles and doing a lot of that stuff in the real wilderness areas. And then I had a really bad bout of malaria that sort of settled me down and got me changing my way of thinking. So from being a pure nomad, I sort of ended up putting my roots down in the space.
And case in point, take
settled.
your anti-malarials for sure. Now, in the Kenya operation, being both in a conservancy and in a national park, and in the conservancy, you're working with the local communities, and in the national park, you're working with the government. What are the main differences between those?
Well, the conservancies are incredible spaces. I mean, first of all, you know, the ownership it's community-owned land. It's individual parcels owned by landlords who've joined together. There used to be a complete community. Now we've harnessed that energy, and we've created a series of conservancies around the edge of the park. Mm-hmm. The landlords and the tourism partners have joined together, and we manage the thing as a unit, you know, so it's not a them and us type of environment. It's very much a cohesive approach to what's best for everybody. You know, I mean, they're very much involved. They like the tourism business model because it creates employment, it creates opportunities, business opportunities for everybody. But at the same time, in those private conservancies, we also have a dual model where we also run livestock and
right.
You know, the guys can still live there, you know, so they're not dispossessed of their land, and you know, it's you're out of here, we're now looking after this space. Sure. It's very much a model where we work together, and it works. I don't know if you've ever heard of Alan Savory. He's a Zimbabwean who was the first Minister of Agriculture, I think, in the Zimbabwean government. Okay. And traditionally, people have always said low volume, high quality volume of cattle, of livestock on ranch land and stuff like that. That's the best way to go. Mm-hmm. Well, he actually turned it upside down and said, no, you need the livestock that is most suited to that environment. So the small zebu cattle, not the big European breeds and things like that, but you need lots of them. And they work in just the same way as the wildebeest. Mm-hmm. So they come in their thousands and they knock all that grass right back down. They break up the earth, rain falls, and it sinks right in, but it goes right in. It doesn't fall off the surface and go scooting off to the gullies and rivers and carrying all the topsoil. Sure. It sinks in and you get this really good grass, heavy grass regrowth. And that's a prime ranch land. And at the end of the day, that's what the wilderness, the wildlife really love. You know, that's a big part of why we have such good game in that area. Sure. I mean, it's probably one of the densest game areas in the whole of Africa, is the reality of it.
I would definitely agree with that, and I had no idea that was part of the background. So that's my lesson learned for today. Yeah. Now, with an area, guests can absolutely get that Lion King experience, like you just said, with the volume, and this is like this quintessential East African experience that you can get over here. I usually suggest that guests kind of slow down, take it easy, and spend more time in each location. Specifically within Kenya, you can easily do time in the concession and time in the National Reserve. What is the actual safari experience? How is it going to be different from staying in the concession, from staying in a reserve in terms of activities?
Yeah, well, you speak my language. We talk about longer stays. And I think, you know, I talked earlier about we were doing 30-day, 45-day trips with no agenda. Right. You know, we didn't have, we've got to move, we've got to shift. And so all those travel days and shorter stays, where you see like 2 or 3 nights, they're mostly wasted days. And you've come all the way from the States or from Europe, only to give up probably a third of your trip to all these travel days. Right. So by settling in, like everybody loves a little bit of routine. You like to know where to hang your clothes. You know what time your tea is coming in the morning, or you're not out of sorts. You've actually become a part of it. And human relationships are a lot of this deal. And it takes 2 or 3 days for you to integrate with whoever you're with at the time.
Completely.
To get past all those sort of pleasantries and all the sort of gentlemanly sort of type of behavior. Suddenly, after day 4, day 5, personalities then evolve, and you get to really dig a little bit deeper, and you get a lot more knowledge and a lot more the raw background of who somebody is and why they are where they are and what they enjoy about it. But then they're also going to take you and show that stuff. And a lot of it is just about hanging out and just sitting and watching and observing. So in terms of what you can do that's different, when you're in a national park, generally the only thing you can really do is a game drive.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing a morning game drive and an afternoon game drive. In between, we're busy feeding you, so it's sort of. You don't come on safari to lose weight. That's a
no, absolutely not.
Yeah. From the morning, the time you wake up, you've got rusks or biscuits or cookies, and you've got cakes and things on the drive. Then you've got a picnic breakfast. Then you've got lunch, and then you've got sort of high tea, and then you're going out again, sundowners and dinner, and it just keeps going on. But the advantage of the private conservancies or these areas outside of national parks is really that you can go off and you can picnic anywhere. You can drive anywhere and off the road. For those that haven't been on safari before, the ability to follow animals and the behavior is really what we're about. If you're stuck on the roads and tracks and inside a national park, you're very limited in terms of what you can do to follow things around. So if you start hearing a jackal calling, you can drive across there and go and find out where it is. And inevitably, a jackal means, in the early morning, means there's a leopard, mm-hmm. or possibly a lion, but normally a leopard or something like that. So then you just go and you hang out. So you pitched up there in the half dark or even pre-dawn, and you're just listening to what's going on. And all these sounds, your senses come alive. It really energizes you. There's a whole different game going on. You're not locked up in a steel box or in a...
Sure.
I guess there's a difference between driving down a high street in a car with the windows up, aircon on, music pumping loud, and walking down the same street on the sidewalk, smelling the bakery and hearing the click-clack of the shoes coming past you, or hearing the car scooting past. You're much more aware of your environment. So you can get out there super early. You can drive and drive to the sounds and then go and sit and watch the behavior and funnel around the edges and get to spaces where you can just sit back quietly and let stuff happen around you. In a park, that's more difficult because you have the roads and tracks that you've got to stay on.
Mm-hmm,
so you're in a more controlled environment. You can walk, of course. You can get out and track something down. You can walk back into camp while the other part of your family drives back in. We've got little tree houses there. We've got a beautiful escarpment where you can go and climb up for a couple of 1,000 feet, and you're in this amazing sort of view across the Mara.
Right.
There's a great deal of freedom. You can set up and have a picnic where you want. You can have a bush dinner. You can stay out late until midnight with torches and with thermal imaging stuff and have a look and see what happens after dark. That's super interesting.
Right.
So it really, being a conservancy gives you a lot more freedom than a national park.
Mm-hmm.
But then national parks are national parks because those are the core areas.
Sure.
And so they are prime time game viewing. That's where your bigger volumes of predators, your bigger volumes of elephant and the like are. Although I have to say, Mara North Conservancy is as good as any national park that you'll ever go to.
I've had awesome game viewing up there. And how you just described the diversity of the things that you can do there is so, I think, for both first timers and for safari enthusiasts and connoisseurs, your operation works incredibly well, because obviously a guest that's coming there that hasn't been, I guess, initiated yet they're going to have their mind blown. And those that have been to the area before and have been on safari before, whether it's East Africa, Southern Africa, the level of service and the quality of the guiding that you have and the diversity of the activities that you can do and the game that you can see, it's something for both ends of the spectrum. Your operation is, I love it because the level of, you have one of the highest staff to guest ratios in the business. All of your every booking that, whether it's a solo traveler or a family of 10, you've got your own private guide and tracker that's guaranteed. There's no additional surcharge or anything like that. So to your point of longer stays where a guide can really gel with your personality, it just makes it your tailor-made safari that you're not going to be herded around with other people. And I think that speaks volumes. When did that become completely evident to you that we need to have this type of level of service to the guest?
It's something we've always done, from my father's time, my grandfather, myself. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Why do you come all that way just to have a compromised existence?
Mm-hmm.
When you have your own car and your own guide, if you want to get out at 5 a.m. because you're a really keen photographer, or if you half want to walk and half want to drive, or maybe you've got like little kids that want to stay a little longer in camp, and so dad wants to go out and take some pictures, he can go and take pictures, and the others can come and join you, or you can come back and meet them. You're not beholden to anybody else's schedule.
Completely.
And I think that's a really important thing. People have so little time anyway these days. When we're talking about 45-day, 30-day safaris,
sure,
people are talking about 10 to 14-day safaris.
9.
Well, that's it. Somebody's like, what can I do? I want to go to 10 different places in 5 days.
Right.
It's like, I want to do Europe in a week. Well, okay, seriously. Do you want to do Europe, or should we just plug you in front of the TV? You'll have more fun.
Seriously. I totally agree.
So the private cars and the guide and everything is really intrinsic to the value of what we provide and to your ability just to go and enjoy it, because it means that you're not on a schedule. You can stay out all day if you want to.
Yeah.
You can come back in if you're getting cold or whatever, or somebody can come in, the others can go back out. I think the big advantage too, of you touched on it earlier, of the longer stay, mm-hmm. is that especially for the Masai Mara is suitable for everybody. It's for photographers. You've got stuff everywhere. So there's a reason why the BBC and all these guys have been filming in the Mara forever.
Right.
It's because it is just prolific. It's easily viewable, and it's well suited. The animals are used to people and vehicles, that they don't react to them, they just be themselves. So you're seeing natural behavior.
Sure.
When you talk about big multi-generational families, it's awesome because it's a very comfortable environment. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, there's no real bugs there. And when you talk about that, a long stay is really good because kids and old folk, they need routine. It's really, when you keep changing the schedule or shifting and doing, moving from one place to another, each time you've got to get used to what's happening. So there you start to know who's going to be looking after you, what you can do, where you can go, who's going to bring you a drink when you need it, where can you go and find food. You find the kids get into the kitchen and start helping out with the chefs, and then suddenly they're turned up with a cake for granddad. These are the fun things. These are the relationships that you build. But you can only build them after time. When you're only there for 2 or 3 days, you don't build those sort of solid relationships.
Completely.
And for younger kids and things, for parents who've had them on top of them all the time and just want a bit of space to have a gin tonic or whatever, the guys suddenly, they're like, oh, I'll see you later. I'm off to the workshop to go and sort of help fix the car. I'm in the kitchen. Somebody's going to give me, William or Michael's going to give me driving lessons. So they're just gone. You don't see them, which is an awesome thing. It creates that big sense of space.
Right.
And for couples, couples again. Look at that. Private car, awesome. You get your little couple time. Everybody's happy. But when you get back to camp, then you've got everybody else to enjoy and have a good social with. So
completely, and that's part of the whole East Africa experience. You know, that socializing in the evening and just exchanging different stories about what everybody's seen during the day. And you just touched on something that was really, I think, important. You're talking about, you know, the Masai Mara is the Masai Mara, and you know the game viewing is so prolific. The animals are so used to it, and there's a reason why that you've got these famous photographers that are shooting in there. And I briefly wanted to touch on the Great Migration. And sometimes the Great Migration has a bad rap for you know, seeing these river crossings with like 50 vehicles, you know, 100 vehicles that lined up upon the river, and so people are taking photos. But you know, they've got the great experience. But in the background are all these vehicles. And when I was with you in the Tanzania camp, in the Serengeti camp in the north, in Lamai, for the audience, I was one of Alex and I and a colleague were in one vehicle. We were one of 3 vehicles witnessing a river crossing of 2,000 plus wildebeest, and there was nobody else around, like literally no one. And this is stuff that, you know, this is like my 10th time to Africa at the time, and I'd never seen a migration crossing, a river crossing. And it's just this mind-blowing experience where Alex has handpicked these sites in these key remote areas, and you can have this massive National Geographic, prolific, just profound, insane experience, all the momentum of the wildebeest, thousands upon thousands crossing the river, and you can have it to yourself. How did you pick these sites, A, and B, can you take us through the Tanzania operation, going for how it works going from the north to the south?
Okay, so I mean, the river crossings, let's talk about the migration, which is a big focus for a lot of people that come to the Mara and to the Serengeti. You know, everybody thinks migration equals the river crossings where the crocodiles go munch on all these thousands of animals. Reality is that the migration happens all year round. And right now, we're in one of the best parts of it, the rut. And so the southern central Tanzania, they're just coming up literally within the next couple of weeks. They'll be feeding into the area around the river. And then by sort of early, mid-July, it's when you start to see the river crossings kick in. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you want to see anything in nature, anything, and the reason that you came on safari all that way was to come and see a river crossing or to see part of migration, then you've got to give it time. You know, you can't just pitch there for 2 days, 3 nights, 2 days, and expect that it's going to perform for you.
Right.
You know, the wind could be too much, the weather could be wrong, you know, the animals could be spooked by too many lions around. So the first thing is give it at least 4 or 5 nights. The longer you stay, the better the chances. You know, there's definitely less pressure on you. You're not zooming. So inevitably what happens is that most people are booking 2 or 3 nights. And if they're doing that, they're doing the guide a disservice. Any guide in the world, even the best guide in the world, then has to start following the radio and his mates and say, where are the animals? Where's the big crossing? Where's the what? And all they do is they zoom off, and you've got 50 or 100 cars sitting on one of these sites. But that's really just to satiate the client's demand and how it was missold in the first place. Mm-hmm. So you really want to be spending a lot more time. And when you're doing that, the rivers, I mean, the area that the wildebeest are crossing on is at least 100 kilometers long. Mm-hmm. You know, from the Mara all the way down into the Serengeti. And there's not just one crossing every day. There's 10, there's 20, there's 30. The animals don't just cross one way north and one way south. They go in this big old circle. They come, they cross back again. They may even cross twice in a day. Mm-hmm. They'll come down, they'll feed. You think you've got 1.5, maybe 2 million animals with all the zebra and everything else. And they're hopscotching each other, looking for feed. You know, if it rains over there, they're going to go 2-3 days later, they're going to go over there. Mm-hmm. And all the animals are going to shift, but they'll shift in groups of 500 or 1,000 or 10,000. Mm-hmm. And so geographically, the river has all these different bends and the hills that sort of lead you down into it. And sometimes the animals, because there's not enough, it's all about momentum. Mm-hmm. If there's not enough of them, they'll be shifting along the river till they could meet up with others. And then you'll get the sort of volume that creates this sort of big herd mentality. You've seen it in a football stadium and things like that. When people start cheering, that energy's there.
Everybody catches on.
And that's it. Everybody catches a hold of it. The excitement's in the air. The noise is there. The animals are there. And they just decide, okay, let's go. We're going to cross now. Mm-hmm. So, of course, local knowledge really helps. Being down there early, ready to go and have a look-see. So location of the camps is really important. We're very lucky, in Lamai, we're sort of right in the middle of what's going on in the Mara as well, and Corombo is right there.
Completely.
They're crossing right on the corner. So being there first thing in the morning quite often gives us a little bit of an extra advantage. Being able to stay there later in the evening as well. But not being under pressure, because we're principally selling a minimum of 5 nights, We like photographers, 7 or 10 nights. If you're a really keen photographer and that's why you came, give it 7 or 10 nights, because that way you'll see the rewards without a doubt.
And I just want to comment quickly. I don't mean to interrupt at all, but if I'm thinking from a client's point of view, I don't want to sit around and wait for a migration for that long. You've got to understand where these areas are. There's always stuff going on. So if your sole focus is on the migration, you can definitely touch on that. But you're not just going to be waiting for the migration the entire time. There's tons of stuff to see, right?
Yeah, the cat's all around. Look, you've got all that prey food, the predators are there. But remember, while you're sitting there waiting, everything else is still happening around you. So in fact, you've just got to put yourself in a nice little hide. And instead of driving around and bumping into everything and causing it to react to you and run away,
sure,
you're actually just quietly there, parked under a tree on the side. And the elephant that come walking into the scene don't even notice you. And the next thing, they're just walking all around the car and doing their things and walking on. Like my little sunbird here, you've got all sorts just there. The bird life when you're sitting waiting is incredible. You suddenly see a snake eagle go and grab something off the ground because it's been turned up, it's been disturbed by all the wildebeest walking past. You'll see inevitably along the river, there's always a lot of water birds. You've got the hippos, you've got crocodiles hanging out. So it's like a good drama, there's a lot of suspense, you're just waiting for stuff to happen. So it's definitely not wasted time. But again, away from the river, there's so much more. The elephants, big, in the northern Serengeti, there's about 6,000 elephant in that area. Certainly 1,000 along the river sort of environment. You've got probably one of the most prolific lion populations in the whole of Africa. I think there's like 5 or 6 big lion populations in Africa. And that area, the northern Serengeti, Masai Mara, is one of them. So, there's a lot of behavior that goes along there. You've got lots of pride. Males are fighting with other males, are deposing sort of the younger boys or the old boys, and the females are sort of sneaking off and going around the corner. There's a lot of action. There's a big story involved with that. And then you've got all the impala, the giraffe, all the little stuff, the mongoose, the serval cats, the civet cats, all this sort of stuff that really sort of lends itself. But if you sit still, the stuff comes to you and you're a part of the scenario. So driving on your game drive and just going and then, blasting around waiting to knock into some action is probably the most common way that people go around on safari. But the reality is that driving around and then finding a space where it just feels right. There's just something about it. You just sit, you stop. And then suddenly, the elephants who you're watching about half a mile away, they're just feeding towards you. And as they get towards you, they spook a lioness out of the bushes, or, there's some hyenas that come cantering over the hill from sort of 5 miles away, and then they lead you off to something else. So it's really being aware of what's happening there and then being able to react to it. Is the best chance, and that's all about time.
Yeah, it's all about time, and no day is scripted, and the diversity is there. You just got to kind of let it happen and experience it, and just have that open mind, have that open heart, and let it come. Now, as it relates to the migration, back to that again, a lot of people are interested in calving season and experiencing that part of it, and not just the river crossings. Can you tell me a little bit about your the camps and the offerings that you do in the Southern Serengeti?
Yes, I mean the calving season, which is, I mean, for me actually is my favorite time.
Okay.
So it's really like so you talk about the December, January, the end of January, February is where the calves start to be born. So right now we're sitting, here we are now in sort of May, June, we're going through the rut. So basically all the cows are being covered by all the bulls. The big advantage of the migration and the wildebeest is that pretty much every cow gets covered by several different bulls. So you'll have a 90-95% take. But they all calve at the same period of time. Mm-hmm. So they all give birth over a period of a month, late January, February, sometimes into March. And the advantage on the big open plains in the south, you know, these huge, I mean, massive sort of sea of grass, but I mean, you can see for miles, 40, 50 miles, without a hill or a tree in the way. And that's one of the big advantages. The predators find it really difficult to tuck themselves away and hide in that environment.
Yeah.
So the wildebeest all give birth in one go, and that's a big defense mechanism. Suddenly there's a proliferation of food on the market. So the lion will come in, they'll come and eat 1 or 2, 3, 4 babies, and then they just fall in a food coma and fall asleep for a day. So everybody's safe for the moment. And then, so the glut on the market basically means that the animals get a chance to grow and get old enough that they're then strong enough. And the soils in the south, these volcanic rich soils, they're packed with minerals. And it really enhances their sort of growth and their ability now to shift. So by the time April, May comes along, now they're shifting back north again. And they're heading up to the Mara River and the area where we have all the river crossings, because the south dries up. There's no longer any water in the south. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason for this sort of big old migratory pattern. But it's year-round. There's always something interesting to go see. So one of the big things that I really love about the south, you can see these crossings and the drama and the numbers in the north. It's those National Geographic moments. But you've never seen the sheer extent. There's this 1.5, 2 million animals spread across the plains there in the south. It's you can drive for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours just through this very dense population of animals and never be out of sight of 10, 20, 30, 40,000 big mammals.
It's almost like you're not on Earth. The experience is that surreal, and we're not just using words. You have to experience it in order to believe it, because it's something you feel. It's not something that you can just see or have somebody be like, oh, you have, this is something that you need to do. It has to be experienced for sure. And in the South, you can also do cultural interactions, correct? Yeah,
sorry, got the gin and tonic on the side.
You're good.
See,
hey, it's evening for you. Yeah, it would be a little bit early for me, but
yeah. Look, I mean, the South is an awesome space. We park ourselves in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area.
Right.
Again, it's a sort of a mixed media environment, but it's a really cool space because it's where basically 4 different cultures mix. We're right on that, sitting on the corner. So you've got the Hadza Bushmen that come from the Yaida Valley, from down in the south, slightly to the south of us. The Maasai are the principal population right around the camp. Mm-hmm. And then you have the offshoot Maasai, the Ndorobo, who are like the real bushmen, the mountain men, Maasai mountain men. They traditionally wouldn't have any cattle or anything. They live off the bush, honey gathering and the like. Then you've got the Datoga, or Mangati as the Maasai call them. But the Datoga they're fascinating people. They originate from the highlands of Ethiopia.
Okay.
And they would have come into northern Tanzania maybe around 12 or 1300. The Maasai are actually the most recent guys. They really came in about 250, 300 years ago from the
I had no idea.
Nile Basin, from southern Sudan. And then you've got the Wasukuma, who are Bantu, who would have come out of Central Africa and the Congo and around the lakes, and they've fed across. And this is where they've all sort of met and created these sort of hard boundaries, but they're all intertwined and they live together. So the Hadza, the first people I talked about, I mean, they are the first people of East Africa. They are the original people. So you talk about Olduvai Gorge, you talk about
Right.
Laitoli, which is only 10 miles from camp. This is where the earliest footprints of upright hominid man were discovered by Mary Leakey and her crew.
Yeah.
These footprints, carbon dating these footprints is putting them back to like 3.6 million years. Is the volcanoes. We put that into context. We've got as we stand today, we're probably 200,000 years as Homo sapiens.
Did your honey guide get a little creative there?
Yeah, there you go. Not the light bulb over. No, so we're 200,000 years as Homo sapiens. You're dating these footprints back 3.6 million years. It's incredible. These are the earliest upright hominid footprints, and from the fossil record that they're showing is pretty much the same as how it appears today. The same trees, the same geography. Mm-hmm. The same, there's big buffalo tracks in the same cement there. There's concrete there. There's ostrich footprints. There's guinea fowl tracks. There's little gazelle tracks and things like this. So it's you're experiencing it in much the same way as guys did all that time back then.
It's a coming home. We all come from Africa.
It's a phenomenal space, and it's very, very beautiful. We've got this big 3,000 foot drop off to the escarpment, these beautiful rocky kopjes, these huge open plains.
Thank you for listening to Smart Aspirations. Justin Huff is the manager of Swaggy Swan Travel. For all travel-related inquiries, please visit www.swaggyswan.com. That's www.swaggyswan.com. And click Inquiries. Have a stupendous day, and we'll see you next week.